Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen is demanding to borrow OP's car even though she's wrecked it in the past. Am I the jerk for refusing to lend my car to my friend after she wrecked it last time? I, 29 male, have a decent car that I worked hard to buy. It's nothing fancy, but it gets me where I need to go. A few months ago, I lent my car to my friend Kelly, who's 28, for a weekend trip. I trusted her and I thought it would be fine. However, she ended up wrecking it, totaled the front end. She swore it was an accident and offered to pay for the repairs, but it took weeks to get it fixed, and I was out of a car during that time. After she finally paid for the repairs, I was still feeling pretty uneasy about lending my car again. Fast forward to last week, Kelly asked to borrow my car for a family event because her car was in the shop. I hesitated and told her I was uncomfortable lending it out again after what had happened last time. She got really upset and accused me of not trusting her. I tried to explain my feelings, but she kept insisting that I was being dramatic and that it was just an accident. Now, our mutual friends are divided. Some think I should give her another chance, while others agree that I have every right to be cautious. I feel terrible for letting her down, but I also think my feelings are valid given the circumstances. Am I the jerk for refusing to lend my car again? Not the jerk. She's right, you don't trust her, and with good reason. She wrecked your car when you loaned it to her as a favor. And even if she paid for the repairs, you still had to deal with not having a car while it was getting repaired. Basically, your friend is upset because she's dealing with the consequences of her own actions. You don't need a reason for not lending your car. You have no obligation to ever lend your car. You don't have to and should not explain or provide reasons. You should simply say, "No, that doesn't work for me." Your friend is acting awfully entitled. If she doesn't have a car and needs one, she can do what the average person does and rent one. Am I the jerk for breaking up with my fiancé for telling her best friend she was not engaged? My now ex-fiancé, 30 female, and I, 27 male, got engaged 3 weeks ago. We've been dating for 5 years, and I finally saved enough money to give her the wedding she wanted. However, 3 days ago, while discussing our guest list, I asked if she wanted to invite her best friend, let's call him James, 30 male. James lives in another state, but since they had been friends for 10 years, I thought it would be great to have him at the wedding. I even offered to pay for his travel expenses. She denied my suggestion, saying it would take a lot of work to bring him, and she wanted the wedding to be a family event. She had often mentioned that James was like family to her, which made me more confused. When I pressed her further, she got annoyed and admitted that she hadn't even told him we were engaged. This revelation caught me by surprise, and I tried to ask her why, but she just stonewalled me. After a couple of hours, I approached her again for an explanation, but she continued to refuse to tell me. I admit that my insecurities got the better of me. In the past, James had confessed his feelings for her, which she turned down, essentially friend-zoning him. However, the way she spoke about him made it seem like she kept him as a backup option. They had married their online characters in a game and often wore matching outfits, which always struck me as odd. Whenever she had fights with her exes, James was always there for her. I told her that the situation made me uncomfortable. If she wasn't planning to tell him about our engagement, she might as well consider herself single, because I wouldn't marry someone who couldn't be honest with me. Yes, I was immature, but so was she. In response, she texted James, showing me her phone as she wrote, "Hey, just so you know, I was engaged, but not anymore," and sent it to him. That was the last straw for me. I told her to pack her things and leave my house. Since she left, she's been calling me, but I've refused to answer. My mom called me because my ex apparently contacted her and said I was an awful person for ending things over such a ridiculous situation. So, am I the jerk? Update. I just got home after talking to my still ex-fiancé, and since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. As I mentioned in my original post, I pay for the house since I bought it before dating her, and I asked her to move in because it was close to her job. I work from home since I'm in tech, but she has to go to work. That's why I paid for her car to help her with her commute, especially since her salary isn't great. I thought this was a partner's responsibility, and I truly believed she was the one for me. Despite everything, she is smart, funny, and we have great chemistry, but I felt betrayed. Now for the update. We met at a coffee shop under the premise of discussing how to save our relationship. At least that's what she thought. As soon as we sat down, I asked to see their messages. She immediately became defensive and told me she had deleted everything. I insisted on looking at her phone anyway. She began to cry, really ugly crying, and even a waitress came over to check on her. After about 20 minutes of pleading, she finally handed me her phone. I was curious and felt I needed to know. As I read the messages, I realized there wasn't any cheating, like exchanging pics or professing love, but what I found still hurt me. There was a lot of negative talk about me, criticizing my hobbies like video games and pro wrestling. They mocked me for being into them and even questioned my masculinity because of my interests. Two messages particularly stood out. One where she mentioned that I was having trouble with our love life, which was frustrating to her, and another where she complained about feeling stuck in our relationship. Yes, I was experiencing issues because I was grieving my father, who had passed only 6 months ago. Regarding her feeling stuck, I had told her that when we got married, if she wanted, she could leave her job, and I would provide for both of us. I don't know if she took that the wrong way, but it was related to that. When I returned her phone, she started giving excuses for saying those things, claiming that James was like a therapist for her. Then she asked, "Don't you complain about me to your friends?" I simply said, "No, I don't." That made her cry even more. I took a deep breath and asked her to return the ring. I didn't have it with me, but I knew it was time to end this. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually gave it back. I stood up and told her to delete my number and to not contact me anymore. After that, I called her mom and asked her to come pick up her daughter's belongings from my house. Her mom is a good person, and I realize now that I'm going to miss her. She understood my reasons for ending the relationship, but didn't pry too much, which I appreciated. As for my mom, I didn't call her, I just blocked her. I realized she has never had my back in anything, and I was always trying to salvage a relationship that was already failing. I was never against her having male friends or any friends at all. People will cheat, friends or no friends. My dad used to tell me, "Opportunity makes the thief," but I don't fully agree with that. Since I have the next 2 weeks off work, I plan to figure out what to do with the wedding money, enjoy some drinks, play games, and watch Monday Night Wrestling later. Edit. Some people have been asking me about the car. It's a 2015 Nissan Versa, which she crashed twice, both times by rear-ending someone. I never liked the car. The engine is weak, the interior feels cheap, and overall it's not great. I told her she can keep it. I'd have better luck throwing it off a cliff than trying to sell it. Edit 2. I just got off the phone with her mom, who called to check on me and see when she could pick up her daughter's stuff. We talked about the car, and she basically insisted I shouldn't let her daughter keep it for 2 reasons. 1, I paid for it, and 2, my ex wouldn't be able to maintain it. So I'll be keeping the car until I can sell it. Also, some people accused me of being fake because they said I wasn't a real man for playing games, yet they play WoW. To clarify, the real man thing was more about my hobby of pro wrestling than gaming, but they clearly mocked me for playing certain games. I remember one specific message where James said, "How could a grown man play such a girly game and cry?" Yes, I cried while playing Life is Strange. I also cried during I'm Afraid cutscene in Red Dead Redemption 2. I guess I'm a bit of a crybaby. I never understood staying with someone while you trash talk them to your friends. If you're that unhappy, leave. Don't string them along. If you think they're that bad, why are you still with them? I'm glad he got away from her. He deserves better. Am I the jerk for exposing my husband's affair with his girl best friend at a family barbecue after his dad told me to get over it? I, 29 female, have been married to my husband, 31 male, for 5 years. We've had a great relationship overall, but there's always been one issue. His girl best friend, Megan, who's 30. She's been in his life since childhood, and while I've always felt uneasy about their closeness, I trusted my husband and tried to be cool with it. Megan is always around. She's at our house constantly, they text all the time, and she even comes on family vacations with us. Every time I brought up how their friendship made me uncomfortable, my husband would brush it off, saying she's practically a sister and that I was overreacting. To make matters more complicated, my mother-in-law, who's 58, is amazing. She's always had my back and has told me multiple times that if Megan made me uncomfortable, I should talk to my husband about setting boundaries. On the other hand, my father-in-law, who's 60, has a very different attitude. He adores Megan and has always said she's part of the family and that I just need to deal with it. He thinks my discomfort with their friendship is just jealousy. Fast forward to 2 months ago, my husband started acting distant. He was coming home late, being secretive with his phone, and just seemed off. I had a gut feeling something was wrong, so one night I went through his phone while he was in the shower. That's when I found it. He and Megan had been having an affair for months. I was crushed. I confronted him and he admitted everything. He swore it was a mistake, said he loved me, and begged me not to leave him. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed quiet for a while trying to process everything. A couple of weeks later, my in-laws hosted a big family barbecue. I was still reeling from the affair, but my husband convinced me to go, saying that we needed to keep up appearances while we worked things out. I went, but I was a wreck inside, especially knowing Megan would be there. Sure enough, Megan showed up like nothing had happened, acting all friendly with everyone, including me. I was boiling inside, but I kept it together. Then, during dinner, my father-in-law made some offhand comments about how Megan would always be a part of the family and that I needed to get over my insecurities. He said this in front of everyone. That was my breaking point. I stood up, looked straight at him, and said, "You know what? I would get over it if she wasn't sleeping with my husband." The entire table went silent. Megan's face turned white, and my husband tried to calm me down, but I wasn't having it. I told everyone exactly what had been going on, the sneaking around, the lies, the betrayal. My mother-in-law was furious, but not at me. She laid into my husband and Megan, saying they had destroyed our marriage and disrespected me. My father-in-law, though, had the audacity to say I was overreacting and that affairs happen, but I shouldn't have aired it out in front of the family. He even defended Megan, saying she made a mistake and we should all move on from it. I left the barbecue and I've been staying with my mom ever since. My husband keeps begging me to come home and my mother-in-law has been supportive, but my father-in-law is telling the whole family that I'm the one causing drama and blowing things out of proportion. Am I the jerk for exposing their affair in front of everyone at the barbecue? Should I have kept it private, or was I right to call them out after everything? Edit. My mother-in-law and I are very close. Should I show her what you guys are saying about father-in-law possibly cheating and see if she wants to look into that? Their marriage has been very rocky and she's been wanting to get out of it, but he's been the breadwinner for years. Edit 2. We never had any kids. My soon-to-be ex-husband can't have kids. Not sure if this counts as a mini update, but after seeing some of the comments about father-in-law maybe wanting to hook up with Megan, I asked mother-in-law if there was something weird going on, or if she knew if he had ever cheated before. They've been married a long time, and she told me that he's cheated 10 times. One that you guys might find important is that he hooked up with Megan's mother. Maybe that's why he loves her so much. As far as she knows, he didn't hook up with Megan. The other 8 affairs were with people he worked with, and one of them was an old high school friend. I will be researching a lawyer tomorrow morning. Update 2. Mother-in-law told father-in-law to get a DNA test with Megan or she's divorcing him. He said he would try to schedule something tomorrow. I'm really glad I came to Reddit with this because some of the stuff we're finding out wouldn't have come to light otherwise. If Megan is my ex-husband's sister, that would be hilarious and their problem, not mine. Also, mother-in-law is getting a divorce no matter what, but he doesn't know that yet. She just decided an hour ago. Yes, I will be helping her with a place to stay. She wants to get into real estate with me, so I'll be trying to pull some strings and help her out in every way possible. She has seen all the comments, and with Reddit's support, plus mine, she found the strength to leave. It's a painful situation for both of us, but I'm glad we're going through this together so we can support each other. When the DNA test results come back, if they actually do this, she plans to cut off my ex-husband and father-in-law completely. I also wanted to mention that father-in-law was hooking up with Megan's mother for maybe a month or 2. That's why mother-in-law thinks the timelines add up. And yes, father-in-law knew about the affair, which really boils my blood. He wasn't even decent enough to tell me about it. If it was me or mother-in-law cheating, both father-in-law and my ex-husband would be very upset. Am I the jerk for letting my fiancé sit in the car for 2 hours while I ate dinner because she was complaining about her hair? My friend invited me, male 40, and my fiancé, female 36, out for dinner with another couple. When I asked my fiancé about it, she agreed that we should go. My friend made the reservation at a restaurant that was closer to us, even though it turned out to be a longer drive for him and the other couple. On the day of the dinner, my fiancé wasn't feeling great, so I offered to cancel, but she insisted we go. I respected her choice and didn't cancel. As it was time to leave for dinner, she struggled with her hair and asked if she could wear a hat. I want to clarify that she doesn't need to ask me for permission. She is her own person and I respect her choices completely. Normally, I'm against wearing hats inside a restaurant because I was raised to believe that hats at the dinner table are disrespectful. However, since the restaurant was casual and I didn't want to wait around for her to do her hair and risk being late, I said yes to help things move along. When we arrived at the restaurant, we saw a sign that said, "No hats allowed in the dining room." I chuckled to myself, thinking it was no big deal, and we headed back to the car so she could fix her hair. Once in the car, she started having a meltdown, saying her hair looked terrible and that she needed to fix it. For context, she has long, curly brown hair that can be tough to manage at times. I thought her hair looked just fine, but I chose to stay quiet because I was frustrated by her reaction, which felt childish to me. After about 5 minutes of her trying to fix her hair, she was getting really upset with me. By this point, we were late, and my friend had already seen us in the parking lot. I told her that I had to go inside, and she replied that I could go ahead and she would stay in the car. I went inside and explained to the staff that she was not feeling well, but might join us shortly. While I was ordering drinks, she never showed up, so I ordered her a bottle of water and brought it to the car to check on her. When I got back to the car, she seemed fine, so I asked her what she wanted to do. She didn't really respond, so I said I was going back in to order dinner. I asked if she wanted anything, and she just said no. An hour and a half later, after enjoying several drinks and a great dinner, I told my friends I had to leave, even though I was really upset that my fiancé had let me down by worrying so much about her hair. When I returned to the car, she was furious and said she felt humiliated that I had just left her there. She was also upset that I hadn't helped her with her hair and told her it looked great. At that point, I told her she was acting like a child and she needs to grow up. I explained that she was at fault because she had the choice to go inside the restaurant or just go home, and I would have taken an Uber. Several days later, she's still upset with me. I think she should get over it. Should I tell her she was right, or should I hold my ground? Not the jerk. She basically said, forget everyone's plans because her hair wasn't perfect. She's either extremely vain or extremely insecure, or a combination of the two. Either way, she's immature and selfish. She could have called an Uber home. I'm guessing she sat in the car just so she could play the victim. You went above and beyond by catering to her immaturity and bringing her water and checking in. She turned what could have been a nice dinner into an argument because of her hair. Am I the jerk for leaving my boyfriend for no reason? I, 26 female, had been with my now ex-boyfriend, Eric, for 2 years. Overall, we had a good relationship, nothing out of the ordinary until last night when everything completely fell apart. We were out at a bar with some of his friends, just having a typical night, drinks, food, the usual. Eric and his friend Mark, who's 28, were joking around, and Eric made a comment about how much Mark was eating. He said something like, "Careful, Mark, you'll eat the whole dang bar." It seemed harmless at first, just typical guy humor. But then Mark looked directly at me and said, "If only she knew." It was one of those moments where you instantly feel uncomfortable, like there's something going on behind your back. I had no idea what Mark was talking about, but the vibe at the table completely shifted. Before I could even process it, Eric exploded. He started screaming at Mark, telling him to shut up, and even tried to get physical. His other friends had to hold him back. Mark didn't react, which only made Eric angrier. The whole thing was awkward as heck, and we ended up leaving early. When we got back to my place, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark's comment. I asked Eric, what the heck did Mark mean by "if she only knew"? What is it that I don't know? Instead of answering me, Eric lost it again. He started yelling, telling me to drop it and to stop being paranoid. Every time I asked a question, he dodged it and got more and more upset. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I just wanted to know what was going on. It felt like something important was being hidden from me and I wasn't about to let it slide. But the more I brought it up, the angrier Eric became. Finally, he stormed out of my apartment. Since he doesn't live with me, I locked the door and called it a night. I didn't hear from him until the next morning. When I did, it was just more angry texts telling me to drop it and to leave him alone. At that point, I was done. I'm not going to sit around and be treated like I'm crazy for asking a simple question. I texted him back saying we're done. I told him I need space, and if he can't be honest with me after 2 years together, then I don't want any part of this relationship. End of story. But here's where it gets worse. He's been going around to our mutual friends, telling them that I left him for no reason, and trying to make it seem like I overreacted. Some of them have even reached out to me, saying I should have just let it go, and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. I told them to mind their own business. None of them were there in that moment. None of them saw how he acted. None of them have to live with the pit in their stomach that I've had to since this weird comment from Mark. I'm not about to stay in a relationship where I feel like something shady is going on behind my back. If Eric can't be honest with me after 2 years, what's the point? So Reddit, am I the jerk for leaving him over this? Update. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare, and the more I try to make sense of it, the worse it gets. Mark called me today while I was at work. I didn't expect him to call since he had been ignoring me, but I stepped outside to take the call. What he told me, well, I never in a million years could have prepared for it. Mark told me that Eric had been hooking up with random men. Even as I write this, I'm still in complete disbelief. Mark said he found out about a week ago, but for some reason, it took him that long to tell me. A whole week. I've been living my life completely oblivious, trusting Eric, someone I loved, while this was happening behind my back. I feel so betrayed. When I asked Mark if he and Eric were having an affair, or if this was some sort of twisted thing between them, he swore they weren't. He even made a gross comment about not wanting to touch Eric because who knows what diseases he has. This made my stomach turn. I'm getting tested for everything now. When I called Eric to confront him about this, he completely lost it on me and blamed me for his actions. He told me it was my fault that he had been doing this. This whole thing has been messing with my head in ways I can't even explain. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. How could he do this to me? Am I the jerk for naming my baby something unconventional? So I, 29 female, recently gave birth to my first baby, a girl. My husband, who's 31, and I spent months deliberating over the perfect name for her. We're both into mythology and literature, and we wanted a name that felt unique but also meaningful. After a lot of back and forth, we settled on Nyxerin. It's a combination of Nyx, the Greek goddess of the night, and Irina, which means peace in Greek. We thought it sounded poetic, strong, and unique. I shared the name with my family a few weeks before she was born, and the reactions were mixed. Some of them thought it was cool and different, but others were clearly taken aback. My mom said it was a mouthful, and my sister-in-law, who's 34, was silent for a while before saying, "Well, it's interesting." The real drama started at a family dinner after the baby was born. My aunt, who's 62, who is never shy about her opinions, asked me what we ended up naming our daughter. When I told her, she immediately burst into laughter, like a full-on cackle. I was taken aback and asked her what was so funny, and she said, "You seriously named your kid that? That poor kid. You've practically cursed her with that name." I tried to keep my cool and asked what she meant, and she went on a rant about how Nyxerin is a made-up weird name that would just make my daughter's life harder. She said that she would be bullied in school, that no one would ever spell it right, and that we were trying too hard to be unique. She even went so far as to call me selfish for giving her a name like that, and said I was setting her up for a life of frustration. I snapped back, saying that it's our baby and our choice of name, and that she should respect it. She then accused me of being sensitive and said I wouldn't last in the real world if I couldn't handle a little feedback. The whole dinner turned awkward, and my husband and I ended up leaving early. Now I'm starting to second-guess myself. My mom said my aunt was out of line, but also added that people do have a point, and suggested that we might want to consider a more normal name. My husband says we shouldn't change anything just because a few people don't like it, but the whole thing has left me feeling conflicted. So, am I the jerk for naming my baby Nyxerin and for getting upset when my aunt called me out on it? I have an unconventional name, and life has been hard. Less opportunities in pretty much everything, and everyone judges you by your name. It's a curse. I hate my name. Nope, not saying it, so don't ask. I won't ever fully understand the selfish motivation that parents have. No forward thinking, no awareness of what your kid will go through. OP, to be honest, if you like the name so much, change your name to whatever you chose. If you don't, please learn from my experience above. My name haunts me everywhere I go. Soft, you're the jerk. The name literally means nothing in it in Dutch. You need to think about whether you're choosing a name based on your daughter's needs or based on your own desire to sound clever. Your aunt could have handled it better, but she just gave you a preview of what your daughter is potentially going to experience for the rest of her life every time someone asks her what her name is. Sounds like a medication. I am that awful ex who everyone dreads after he met someone else. After nearly 8 years of being a placeholder, he found someone he really liked and committed to her immediately, and I haven't handled it well. I've been absolutely broken and destroyed. I harassed both of them and sent multiple messages to his new girlfriend, calling her all sorts of names and telling her that he was holding me and telling me he loved me just 2 months before they started dating, and that when he first met her, he denied being interested in her and accused me of being anxious and paranoid. Even a month before I messaged her, he was telling me that he used to love me, but I destroyed it all with my anxiety. It was always a stressful situation. He was always talking to other women and refusing to commit, but I did feel that in some way he loved me. Anyway, she sent me a very heartfelt and kind reply urging me to find God and move on, and they both blocked me. I feel broken and ashamed, and I still miss him to this day. I'm sorry everyone for being the crazy ex. I just really did love him and was very dependent on him in a lot of ways and haven't coped with feeling abandoned and alone. I'm not a bad person, honestly. I don't think I am. I just wanted to be loved like you are. Love, the crazy ex-girlfriend. Edit. To be honest, I think the worst part is that I don't actually truly regret it. I was so hurt and upset, and I just wanted to let her know what had happened. Edit 2. Thank you for all the supportive messages. Yes, I know I shouldn't have messaged. That's why it's a confession. But getting it off my chest helps. I can't apologize to him or her as they're gone, and I will probably never speak to either of them again, but being able to say it here has helped. I still haven't processed the hurt and injustice. I still miss him. I don't really know what to do with myself. I don't know where to go from here. I still feel anger, not just at them, but mostly at myself for not being good enough to be chosen. I still feel like a prize loser and very worthless, and I still don't want to date or meet anyone else, ever. But I am very sorry to both of them. I will always treasure every moment of what we had. Hard truth here. This pattern will repeat itself if you don't change. The dependency, the anxiety, these things will give people the ick. So when they meet someone who is good with being alone and doesn't smother them or make them feel like they can't cope without them, it's like a breath of fresh air. She isn't perfect. She will have her faults, but that isn't relevant. You need to break the cycle of codependency and build your self-esteem. Otherwise, you will keep attracting wrong ones. I don't think your response is all that surprising. The guy strung you along for 8 years and was professing his love to you just 30 days prior to dating the new one. I've been in a situation like this with an ex-girlfriend, and honestly, you have no idea what's going on in their relationship. I have a feeling he or she or both of them will do the same thing. The hardest part for me was all the time I wasted when I could have used it towards bettering myself. Like you, I don't want to date, but I no longer miss her. Maybe some element of her, but I don't miss the relationship. I was experiencing severe grief when I met her and put on several medications that made my symptoms worse. I wish I had done a better job of taking care of myself, but I had just moved away from my family during lockdown. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to stop crying about missing out on our daughter's wedding? As the title says, my wife, who's 53, and I, 55 male, have 3 kids, Brett, who's 27, Amy, who's 25, and Lynn, who's 24. Let me just say, I love all my kids in their own way. But none of them have ever given me a headache like Lynn. She's our wild child. Got a college degree at 16, started working and saving up, moved to Louisiana when she turned 18, got more degrees, and now lives a pretty good life. I'm proud of her, of course, but she's always been our fiercely independent, argumentative, intelligent daughter. She's also the most social of our kids. She's covered in tattoos, piercings, and always has unique hair. I love her to death, but she's definitely our non-traditional kid. Lynn met her now husband, Brad, who's 27, shortly after moving to Louisiana. Brad is a lot like Lynn. He's got tattoos and piercings all over, non-traditional like her. He's a good guy though, and I like him. He's protected Lynn and been by her side through a lot. I actually love the guy for looking out for my daughter. Lynn will be the first of our kids to get married, so when we heard about their engagement, my wife was over the moon. She immediately started talking about wedding planning and all of that stuff. Now, Lynn and Brad were very clear from the start that they didn't want a wedding. They just wanted a small gathering with family and a few friends to celebrate. My wife, however, was very upset about this and kept pushing at Lynn until she reluctantly agreed to plan a wedding. Not even a week into the planning, my wife and Lynn had a spat over floral arrangements, which led to Lynn flying back to Louisiana. After that, Lynn announced they had eloped and were planning a small get-together in New Orleans around Halloween. My wife was devastated. She and Lynn had a massive argument over the phone, and now they're not speaking. Every time the situation comes up, my wife ends up in tears, saying she missed out on her daughter's special day. After weeks of this, I finally lost my patience. I snapped and said, "Why are you surprised? Lynn didn't want a wedding in the first place. She's always been our least traditional kid. I'm just glad we even got an engagement announcement. Stop crying about it and wait for Brett or Amy to get married because they're the ones who will actually want the big wedding." My wife called me some names and has been avoiding me ever since. I really didn't mean to be a jerk, but Lynn is the last of our kids I'd expect to want a grand wedding. She's a nurse who does hair on the side and is also a practicing witch. That girl doesn't follow anyone's rule book. I'd bet Brett would be more into a big wedding when he and his boyfriend eventually get married. It just felt wrong for my wife to push all of that on Lynn. So Reddit, lay the brutal honesty on me. Do I roll over and apologize, or do I stick to my guns and keep supporting Lynn through this mess? Not the jerk. Your wife missed her daughter's wedding because she was acting like she was planning her own wedding. Whatever type of flowers your wife wanted is irrelevant because she is neither the bride or the groom. Karen mocks me at my party, so I pulled off her wig in front of everyone. I, 26 female, had a bachelorette party on Saturday. It was a homely affair, as I'm not the type to go out of town and get drunk. It was a dinner for people I know and their guests at the church recreation center, which my parents spent a good deal of money on to make it seem nice. It was followed by gift opening. At this party, one of my friends brought Helen, someone that I'm not close to, but she is in the friend group. About 2 years ago, I slowly started to distance myself from her as she has shown some jealous tendencies that she masks as others being jealous of her. She's 2 years older than me. I've never liked her, but you have to respect the +1 on your guest list, even if she wasn't on the RSVP list. Or at least that's what my mother told me. During the gift opening, she made some remarks about how so-and-so decided to wear the same shoes as her because she gets copied a lot for her fashion sense. Made a remark about cheap extensions another guest wore. Insulted the dress my niece was wearing as well. I took Siobhan aside as it was her guest, and I told her to keep her under control. She promised that she would. When we cleared the floor for dancing, instead of helping, she went around and pulled down my ratty decorations. I asked her politely to leave if this wasn't her scene. She turned around and accused me of taking her leftovers, as she said that she had hooked up with Andrew. My fiance's name is Michael. Andrew is his brother who's 3 years older than him. She patted my stomach and said, "Yup, you're pregnant. Why else would you be getting married before me?" She even made a comment about me waiting to the last year of secondary school to get taller than her, to steal away all the boys' attention to spite her. I'm 5'5" and she's 5 foot. I had a growth spurt, and it's not something that I could control. She picked at my hairdo and said I even copied her hair color. It's my natural auburn that I've had my whole life. I grabbed her by the hair to pull her towards the door as she kept knocking my hand away when I tried to grab her by the arm. That's when the wig came off. She ran out on her own crying. Am I the jerk for how this went down? My mother thinks that I was not the best host and that my generation is too individualistic to be hosting with manners. Siobhan said that I should have just let her come out of the toilet instead of dealing with it myself, as Helen has been feeling down lately. The guy she was with dumped her a few months ago after 2 years because he didn't want to get married, but Helen found out that he's getting married to the girlfriend he has been with for under 2 months. Of course, that made me the bad guy. Siobhan said that I was quite insensitive. You were insensitive? She has to be joking, right? Because how the heck is someone gonna talk smack and trash at your bachelorette party about you, and when you snap, you're the bad guy? I would have started throwing hands and not just grab her by the hair. Having a hard time is not an excuse. I'm sick of hearing that when people like Helen use it. But it's not an excuse on what she did to you. It may be a factor, but it's not an excuse. She seems like the type, "I'm having a bad day, so I'm going to make it everyone else's problem too." Also, get new friends. I'm talking about Siobhan, not the jerk. Not the jerk. She needed to be brought down a few pegs. She's awful to people and deserved a bit of humiliation. She's been feeling down because no one wants anything to do with her. Don't feel bad. Even if you asked her to leave politely, I don't think she would have, just to be a jerk. You are awesome. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.